Yes, welcome to Morning Joe right here on the Are You Serious Sports Network every Monday and Wednesday from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. I'm your host, Jonah Malkin. Thank you so much for joining me on Facebook Live, on Twitch TV, on Twitter. I am so pumped. I have not gotten a wink of sleep last night because the Lakers are back on top in the NBA National Champions 17th title. I'm going to talk about that. The Cowboys did collect a win, but they suffered a loss, losing Dak Prescott for the season. Russell Wilson is having a fantastic year. What's going on in the NFL? And another great Malkin's Moments. You're not going to want to miss that, so stay tuned for what is going to be probably my favorite show today. I'm not going to lie. Normally, I'm always drinking a cup of Joe right here on Morning Joe, Cup of Joe. But I got to be honest with you, last night I had a little Bartonuro Prosecco for the special occasion. Had to pop out the champagne because that's what we're all about here, is celebrating the moments. And wow, what a day of sports. I'm so pumped and jamped and excited to talk about this. So the Lakers win their 17th NBA title. They tie the Boston Celtics for the most all-time for a franchise with 17, and this one was special. There's no denying how special this championship was for this Lakers team, the amount that they had to endure this year, and to finally see this team after 10 years break through the way they did last night. They came out in dominant fashion, led by 28 after the first half, the second largest lead in a finals game in the NBA history, led 64-36. They just stomped on the Heat in the second quarter. There was no chance. And listen, we've seen this kind of defensive prowess displayed before by the Lakers. They were the third best defensive team in the regular season, third best defensive team in the postseason for opponents' field goal percentage, for opponents' points. They crushed it, not only in the regular season, throughout the entire bubble. So this is not something that is surprising. They're consistent with who they've been this entire season. Not to mention, as you can see, I am wearing a light purple shirt, polo, in honor of the Lakers championship. This is exciting because I got two jerseys right behind me. We did it for this guy right here with Kobe Bryant. This was for him. And I'm just excited because, again, the last time the Lakers won the championship was in 2010. It came against the Boston Celtics. That was with Kobe Bryant and Pau Gasol in 7 games. They trailed 2-3. Kobe is double teamed at the top of the arc on the left wing, kicks it out to Meta World Peace. At the time, Ron Artest hit the 3, iced the game. And that was a special moment for this franchise, a special moment for the city. And I think that's the important thing here. When we look back at this championship, you're going to say, or rather, you're going to divide up the season into probably 10 different parts. I mean, it was trying to slalom through the most windy, difficult path to navigate and traverse. Think about the timeline of this entire season. Right from the jump, you have the geopolitical conflict in China. Daryl Morey makes controversial comments that aren't taken well in China while the Lakers are there preparing to play the Brooklyn Nets in a preseason game. So they have to battle that. They lose hundreds of millions of dollars, the NBA, with their partnerships with China. Then you start the season. David Stern, the longtime commissioner, one of the greatest commissioners in sports history, he passes away tragically. Then you have Kobe Bryant, the icon, the emblem of the city of Los Angeles. He tragically passes away with his beloved daughter, Gianna. And the Lakers have to battle through that emotional roller coaster. Then you have the pandemic that hits, that totally shuts off the season for 4 months. You have the racial injustice and the social unrest that was transpiring throughout the entire season. Then you do return. There is an NBA. The NBA bubble is formed. The highs and lows mentally of having to overcome the isolation of being by yourself, being away from your family for months on end. Then the shooting in Kenosha, Wisconsin, once again halts the season. Players protested. They didn't play in the postseason for the weekend. And then the Lakers had to vote to return again. And the number of highs and lows in this bubble, everyone talks about an asterisk. There should be an asterisk on the champion this year. Yeah, there should be. But not for the path being too easy. Can you imagine? You're a professional athlete. Yes, I understand you're getting paid millions and millions of dollars, but to deal with the emotions of literally an entire year. The NBA season started October 21st last year. Check my calendar today. It's October 12th. That's about 355 days ago. You have to battle that. And for them to persevere the way that they did, LeBron to put on the performance that he did, 28, 14, and 10, recording his 11th finals triple-double, 28th triple-double in the postseason. That's second to Magic Johnson. Think about this. This postseason for LeBron, he averaged 27.5 points a game, 11 rebounds, 9 assists. In the finals, not to mention he shot 56% from the floor, 37% from the three-point line. In the finals, he averaged 30 points a game, 12 rebounds, 8.5 assists on 59% shooting and 39% from the three-point line. This guy is a revelation. He's a marvel. I've always been in awe of LeBron James, but until you get to see him night in and night out, you don't understand what you're watching. You can't appreciate what you're watching. And Frank Vogel perfectly summed up his emotions to watching LeBron James. Says here's the quote. He's the greatest basketball player the universe has ever seen. And if you think you know, you know. That perfectly sums it up. Until you see this guy play day in and day out, you can't appreciate what he's doing. His 4th NBA championship, 4th finals MVP with his 3rd different team. It's never been done before. It's the first time in NBA history that a player has been able to resuscitate 3 different franchises, carry them on his back, and lead them to the promised land. The Heat hadn't been to the playoffs in 4 years prior to LeBron James's arrival. And he joins them, takes them to the finals in year 1. They win the finals in year 2. Takes his talents to go back home to Cleveland. Takes them to the finals in year 1. Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love go down with season-ending injuries. And he still is able to push the Warriors to 6 games and then wins in game 2 and game 7, the following year. Then he comes to LA. And the Lakers have the 4th best record in the West. Then he pulls his groin. Everyone counts him out. They call him the washed king. They make the trade for Anthony Davis. And once again, within year 2, Lakers are back on top. They win the championship. Can we start to appreciate this guy? It's unbelievable. The tumult that this player has had to endure. You realize he's 35. He's going to be 36 in 2 months in December. The start of next season, he's going to be 36 years old. It's his 55th finals game. Most games played in the finals by any player. He just surpassed Derek Fisher for the most postseason games ever. And the irony is his mantra is keep the main thing the main thing. He learned that from Pat Riley and the Miami Heat when he was part of that organization. You know, we talk about asterisk all the time. When does it apply? When does it not apply? If you can't see how in this particular case this should be a positive asterisk, then I can't help you. If you're just going to be too stubborn and too rigid to acknowledge that what this team accomplished this year is second to none, if you can't acknowledge that, I can't help you. If you're too ignorant to see how many different obstacles these players had to overcome, and credit to the Miami Heat. Jimmy Butler was fantastic, and it's so interesting how quick we are to forget he had a marvelous game in Game 2 and in Game 5. And we're also quick to forget that Danny Green probably missed the most wide open three in the universe. At the end of Game 5, LeBron James drove the ball to the basket, down 109, 108. He drew 4 defenders in on him, threw it out to the top of the key. Danny Green misses the three. A wide open three, a career 38% three-point shooter, a guy who was shooting at 40% from the three-point line in the postseason. Misses a wide open three. Thank God that they won in Game 6, that we can wash over that and forget about that. But the amount of adversity, the mental strain that this season and these players have endured is remarkable. I've never seen anything like it. We're going to look back at this championship, not just this championship, but this entire season, and revel at what these players had to endure, because we'll never see anything like this again. And credit to the NBA for their ability to put on and execute at a high level the continuation of the NBA season, the continuation of the postseason and the finals. The aesthetics of the whole bubble were truly amazing. But I think what this championship solidified is that now the Lakers are the number one franchise in the NBA, without question. Yeah, they're tied with the Celtics for the most championships and titles all time. But when we break down the number of championships and titles that they've won in the modern era, so I'm going to say post-1970s. So starting from the 1980s on, Celtics have won only 4 championships. And they've only won 1 in the last 20 years. That was in 2008 against the Lakers with Paul Pierce, Garnett, and Ray Allen the first year that they joined forces. The Lakers in that same time span, starting in the 1980s, have won 11 championships. And they've won 6 since 2000. It's not even close. It is not even close. I'm happy for Anthony Davis. He's just a great dude. You hear him in the post-game interviews, pre-game interviews. He's such a humble, appreciative individual. And I just love how well he and LeBron James gelled and how much they really cared about one another and wanted to see the other succeed, wanted to see the other enjoy and reap the benefits and the rewards of this successful season. It's rare that you see 2 top 5 players in the NBA put their egos aside like that and hone in on what the goal is. Able to set aside all the distractions and focus in on getting the job done. This team's been the most locked-in team from the very beginning. The entire postseason run, the entire bubble, the entire season. They didn't take games off. They played back-to-backs. They took the regular season seriously, unlike another team in Los Angeles that maybe should drive down south once again to San Diego. You didn't get that reference. That's the LA Clippers. Used to be from San Diego. Now they're going to Inglewood. We as a city of LA needed this. This was a mourning city. This was a grieving city. We lost the face of the city in Kobe Bryant. Devastating, tragic loss. And for the Lakers to come together and provide the ultimate unifier, the ultimate rallying cry, the ultimate win in a time of great loss. It's uplifting. And they provided us with that moment. And I've said this again. I've said this before. I'll say this again. We are witnessing the greatest stretch of dominance from athletes. We're seeing the greatest stretch of athletes right now. I'm going to touch on this later at the end of the show, but Rafael Nadal, once again in tennis, won his 20th Grand Slam. We're seeing the best tennis players. Tiger Woods with golf, Tom Brady, and now Patrick Mahomes in football. Sure, Michael Jordan came a little bit earlier, and again, this isn't an argument about who you think is better right now, but regardless of where you place LeBron vis-a-vis and juxtapose to Michael Jordan, you have to acknowledge you're seeing greatness in this stretch right now. And I'm just so happy that they were able to deliver not only a championship because the Lakers and the city of LA needed a championship, just because of the loss of Kobe, what he meant to this franchise, what he meant to this organization, what he meant to this city, and the fact that the consistent sentiment that was shared every huddle was 1, 2, 3 Mamba. They made tributes. They made dedications to Vanessa, to the Bryant family, whenever they could along the entire path. And the Lakers have been in the bubble since July 9th. That's 97 days. Not to mention that there were 0 COVID tests throughout this entire stretch. Not a single COVID test or a positive COVID test throughout the entire bubble. It's remarkable. And championships are always going to be appreciated. They're always going to be lauded. But to win one for the franchise, that's second to none. That's second to none. And that's special. That's special. Blake Jacobs. What's good, James and Jonah? James, Carol, yo. Shout out some of my fraternity brothers that were watching. Shout out to you guys, actually, for a big win against the Buccaneers. For the Bears. Nick Foles is the real deal. This is special. This is absolutely special. And I told you, I couldn't sleep last night. Again, I had this entire Prosecco bottle by myself. I'm surprised I'm even up right now. Now I really need my morning Joe right here on the Are You Serious Sports Network every Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific on the Are You Serious Sports Network, Facebook Live, Twitch TV, and Twitter. Hashtag MJ, hashtag JMalk. And let me shift to this. Cowboys did collect a win, but they suffered a great loss yesterday. And this was honestly one of the more saddening stories. And just makes your heart break a little bit when you see a guy like Dak Prescott suffer a broken ankle. Cowboys, they beat their rival, their divisional rival, the lowly New York Giants, 37-34. Sure, Andy Dalton, congrats. Led the team on a game-winning drive to win. But this is devastating news because Dak Prescott, sure, do I know him on a personal level? No. But based on the way he has presented himself, has carried himself, he's been the perfect embodiment of a leader. He's epitomized what it means to be a leader for the franchise. I just talked about how the Lakers are the franchise in the NBA. It was just voted recently that the Cowboys are the most universally recognizable brand in the world. And not one negative thing to say about Dak Prescott. The only negative thing you can say in his 5 seasons was that at the peak of COVID, he had a few too many people over for a house party. That was it. Okay. That's the only negative thing. He's been the most respectable. He had been the most durable quarterback in the NFL. He was having a career year. He had passed for over 1,800 yards, 9 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Those were all career highs, at least in the passing yards. But here's what breaks your heart. Here you have the most durable guy. Hadn't missed a game in 5 seasons. Hadn't missed a start in 5 seasons. He had played 69 straight games for the Dallas Cowboys. Seeks that long-term deal. For the last 2-3 years, there's kind of been this embattled relationship between his representation and Jerry Jones. And ultimately, he turned down a 5-year, $175 million deal. And the grim reality is now he doesn't have that insurance. Now he doesn't have that protection. And now all he comes away with is a guaranteed $31.4 million franchise tag, which sure, he takes that straight to the bank, but you can't help but wonder, will he ever recover that money back? This is a guy who took over for Tony Romo in his rookie season, led the team to 13 wins, made it to the postseason, lost in the divisional round, had a first-round bye, lost in the divisional round to the Green Bay Packers. Second season, again, plays all 16 games, misses the playoffs because Ezekiel Elliott missed half the season due to some violations and suspensions from the commissioner. His third season, plays all 16 games, leads the Cowboys to the postseason once again. They beat the Seahawks and Russell Wilson in the wild card game. And then they lose to the Rams in the divisional game. And then obviously last year we know what happened with a struggling season. But he's been the most durable player, just a well-respected guy. And I hate that he bet on himself. And unfortunately for him, now I don't know, first of all, if he will ever receive that long-term contract that he is seeking. But he's going to have to prove it again. Because the prudent thing to do if you're an NFL team, if you're the Cowboys, once he makes the full recovery, which the positive is that they said he'll recover in about 4 to 6 months. So that's a more positive outlook. It's not a ruptured Achilles. It's not a torn ACL. So the timeline is shortened. That's a positive. But the unfortunate reality is now he's going to have to prove himself again to the Cowboys that now he can stay durable. And he had just proven that for 4.5 years. What this reminds me of is the Earl Thomas incident. Earl Thomas, tremendous safety, played with the Seattle Seahawks, was vital on the defensive side during their really unprecedented run to 2 straight Super Bowls. They won one, beat the Denver Broncos, and then they lost to the Patriots when Pete Carroll decided to have Russell Wilson throw it at the 2-yard line instead of hand the ball off to Marshawn Lynch. But the bottom line is he was part of that Legion of Boom. He was one of the defensive stalwarts, and he was a staple of this defensive side of the ball for the Seattle Seahawks, which was their identity at that time. And he was holding out one summer, wanted a new contract. We remember this in 2018, just 3 seasons ago. And eventually he acquiesced because the Seahawks hadn't relented. So he said, you know what, fine, I'll play. And in the first game against the Arizona Cardinals, he breaks his leg. And he's carted off, and he's seen holding the middle finger and flipping off the Seattle Seahawks sideline. Now, I'm not saying that he necessarily handled that situation the best or that Dak Prescott's situation is exactly the same. Because obviously, when you're comparing the two, the money is completely different. The guaranteed money would have been completely different. The view and the value that that organizations place on those two positions is different. But it's just really unfortunate because I want to see this guy get his money. And I truly believe that Jerry Jones, the entire Jones family, the organization loves Dak Prescott. I really do. And I don't think that them not giving him $40 million a year is an indication that they don't appreciate what he brings to the table, what he can offer. I think they're just thinking pragmatically, and they're willing to overpay to a degree for someone who they really genuinely like, but they're not willing to give him the Mahomes treatment, which I understand. There's only one or two Mahomes. So it's just disappointing. But again, fortunately, he should make a full recovery. The surgery was successful last night, 4 to 6 month timeline. And that's why you have Andy Dalton there. He has plenty of years of experience as a starter. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Cowboys still make the postseason, because the NFC East is atrocious. I mean, it's absolutely abysmal. Cowboys lead the division at 2-3. I said this before. I was saying I wouldn't be surprised if a team goes 500 and makes the postseason. I wouldn't be surprised if the leader in the division is 7-9 or 6-10 and make it to the postseason. So that's a devastating loss for them, no doubt. On the flip side, if you're a betting man, go to Vegas and bet on the Las Vegas Raiders. Yes, I'm buying in. I'm buying into Derek Carr. I'm buying into John Gruden. This is a legitimate team, folks. This is a legitimate team. I said this after the win over the Saints, and I know the Saints were hobbled. I don't care. Derek Carr is playing great this year. He was 22 of 31 yesterday, 347 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. On the season, he's got 11 touchdowns, just 1 interception, over 1,400 yards. Everyone thinks that Derek Carr has fallen off a cliff. It was only 4 years ago that he had his MVP caliber season in 2016, where he threw for over 3,900 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. But here's the thing about Derek Carr. The last 2 years, all I kept hearing was, Derek Carr is adequate. He's not that good. He's kind of middle of the road. He's a pedestrian kind of quarterback. And yet, in the last 2 seasons, he's passed for over 4,000 yards in back-to-back seasons for the first time ever in his career, which was top 10 in the NFL last year. He's completing 73.5% of his passes this year. You realize that? They're 3-2 and have probably played one of the most difficult schedules, if not the most difficult schedule so far in the season. Their only 2 losses came to the Bills on the road, where they lost 23-30, and then versus the Patriots, who they're a 2-2 team, but you'd be fooling yourself and lying if you didn't think that this was a quality 2-2 team. They probably should have beaten the Kansas City Chiefs the other day. They've got a balanced offensive attack. They've got a great run game with Josh Jacobs, who once again poured in 2 touchdowns on the ground. He's second in the NFL in total rushing yards with 377. He leads the NFL in rush attempts with 101. Leads the NFL in rushing touchdowns with 5. Josh Jacobs is a beast. I've talked about their tight end, Darren Waller, who had his coming out party against the New Orleans Saints. This guy is an athlete. What is he, 6'6", 255, 6'6", 255. And he's agile. He's athletic. He's versatile. He can make catches in tight windows. He can create space. He gets open. And then we're starting to see an emerging star at the wide receiver position in Henry Ruggs out of Alabama. This guy is a speedster. This kid can fly, man. He ran the 40-yard dash in 4.27 seconds. Only had 2 catches yesterday. 118 yards and a touchdown. This kid can fly. And again, going back to Derek Carr, back-to-back games with 300-plus passing yards. Was an MVP contender in 2016. This was not that long ago. I've talked about some of their hard hitters on the defensive side before: LaMarcus Joyner, Corey Littleton, Jonathan Abram. Oh, that is a bad, bad boy right there. They're not scared. And credit to John Gruden, because he has this team believing. That's the most important thing. They bought in. They're mentally tough. They're physically tough. They get after you. They're hard hitters on the defensive side of the ball, and the team believes in themselves. They believe that they can beat elite teams. At the end of the day, that's the most important thing. As long as you believe, these are pro NFL guys. Everyone's talented. Now, listen, I still think Kansas City is the better team. And if there's one thing that we learned, it is that you have to be perfect to beat Kansas City. You have to be perfect. Raiders played perfect yesterday. On the flip side, for the Chiefs, they don't have to be perfect to beat you. And to be honest, I don't think they've played a complete game this entire season. They haven't played a complete game. They haven't looked like a great team, and they haven't strung together an entire hour of football in 5 games this year. And yet, they're 4-1 because, in my opinion, they've got the greatest football player to ever live, and he's only ascending. And this team is so talented that they don't need to play perfectly every time to win. Other teams do. The Patriots had to put together the most perfect game plan to keep this game close against them. The Chargers had to call the best plays. They had to control the clock, and yet they still lost. The Texans jumped out to a quick early lead in the first quarter, and they lost. This is the first time the Chiefs lost in 14 games since last November. They were riding a 13-game winning streak, and the Raiders cut off that umbilical cord. They said, nope. Not today. Not today. Once again, Morning Joe, right here on the Are You Serious Sports Network, on Facebook Live, on Twitch TV, on Twitter every Monday and Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Wow, what a morning. What a morning. Not only the Lakers win, my favorite NFL player was back at it again, Russell Wilson, Seattle Seahawks. For people wondering why I love Russell Wilson so much, he is a Wisconsin guy. Transferred from NC State to play at Wisconsin. So I went to Wisconsin, so naturally I'm going to root for him. He's just fantastic, guys. 5-0 this year. Only 2 other teams in the NFL are undefeated: the Bills and the Green Bay Packers. And he just did it again. Completes 2 fourth-down passes, a 4th and 10 at his own 20-yard line to DK Metcalf, and then a 4th and goal at the 6-yard line, hits DK Metcalf again for the go-ahead score to win this game. So far, he has thrown 19 touchdown passes. That is the most. That's one shy of Peyton Manning's record for the most ever through the first 5 games of an NFL season. Here's what's impressive about the Seattle Seahawks. The game is close. They're going to win. Over the last 2 seasons, it's remarkable. They are 14-2 in games decided by 1 score or less. 14-2. You know how difficult that is? That's the difference between a team finishing 10-6 and a team finishing 6-10. That's the difference between a team going 13-3 and a team going 4-13. In the NFL, it comes down to how you execute at the end of games. Most of these games are one-score games. And literally, the Seahawks with Russell Wilson have only lost 2 games in 14 one-possession games. 2 out of 14 they've lost. ESPN said this was the 14th win by the Seahawks in one-possession game since the start of last season. No other team has had more than 10 wins in one-possession games. I mean, Russell Wilson, listen, his stats are fantastic. Over 1,500 yards, second in the NFL, most touchdown passes with 19. Only 3 interceptions, 19 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Top 6 QBR, 80.8. And just, again, he and Patrick Mahomes are the 2 guys you watch now and you say they're never out of a game because they've got that one card that trumps it all. They've got the one joker card that you can just throw in there. They've got that one Rubik's Cube that you just can't figure out. And he's just tremendous. This was his 34th game-winning drive he's led in the fourth quarter or overtime, the most in the NFL since he entered the league in 2012. His 34th game-winning drive since 2012? Keep it up, Russ. Right now, he's my MVP. He and Aaron Rodgers are neck and neck. I just think that Rodgers has more weapons right now, so I'm giving the edge to Russell Wilson. They're both playing at a supremely high level, but I just have to give it to Russ right now because think about his weapons. Again, everyone lauds DK Metcalf, and they should, but he was a second-round draft pick. Tyler Lockett was a seventh-round draft pick, or a third, rather. Chris Carson, the running back, was a seventh-round draft pick. It's not like they're getting these jewels in the first round. This team is not – you wouldn't consider them having a treasure trove of elite players across the board. No, their defense is atrocious. They're the worst defense in the league against the pass. They're good against the rush, but they're terrible against the pass. They don't get opposing pressure on opponents' quarterbacks. And yet, because of this guy, they find a way to win. Okay. I want to transition now to the New Orleans Saints and Michael Thomas, not Michael Thompson. That's the broadcaster for the Lakers, former Lakers player. Michael Thomas, star wide receiver for the New Orleans Saints, and for the contingent in the South from the Are You Serious fan base. Sorry for this reality, but you guys got a problem on your hands. This is not the New Orleans Saints team that we were expecting to see. Apparently, some altercation between Michael Thomas and an irrelevant backup. His name is Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Michael Thomas punched his teammate in the face. Or I don't know if it's in the face, but I'm assuming if they say he punched him, he probably punched him in the face. And so Sean Payton decides to suspend him and bench him, basically, for this Monday Night Football game against the Chargers. This is a 2-2 New Orleans Saints team that is an embattled franchise right now. Embattled organization. And this perhaps could be a harbinger for what's to come for this team. The biggest question mark I had about the Saints coming into this season was not their talent. It was their cohesiveness. How together would they be? They've had a tumultuous offseason. Drew Brees, with his controversial comments about the Black Lives Matter, probably fractured that locker room. We know how outspoken Malcolm Jenkins was about it. Michael Thomas certainly wasn't happy about that. Obviously, Drew Brees ended up clarifying his remarks, but you know if that fractured the locker room. and the repeated number of shortcomings for this franchise, you have to imagine it's taking a toll on this team. And Drew Brees isn't getting any younger. He's 41. Think about the timeline for the Saints. Last year, they lose to the Minnesota Vikings at home in overtime to Kirk Cousins, who had never won a postseason game, who had never had any success in the postseason. He wins his first game on the road at the Dome. That's last year. 2 years ago, they play the Rams at home. They lose that game off a terrible no PI call against the Rams that forced the Saints to have to settle for a field goal with about 2 minutes left in the game. So that gave the Rams a little bit more time to come down and also tie it on a field goal. And then obviously we know Drew Brees to start the overtime throws a pick, and Greg Zuerlein hits a 57-yard field goal to win the game for the Rams to punch their ticket to the Super Bowl. 3 years ago, the miracle in Minnesota. Case Keenum throws a prayer, launches a heave down the sidelines. Stephon Diggs makes the catch, somehow turns and runs it in for 61 yards in the most improbable victory in an NFL game I've ever seen. That's what this New Orleans Saints team has had to deal with for the last 4 years, and now we're starting to see this bubble over. Michael Thomas has been fantastic. This is his 5th season. In all 4 years, he's caught for over 1,100 yards, and his receptions have only increased every single season. Last season, he caught passes for over 1,700 yards, and he was rewarded with the highest paying contract given out to a wide receiver, $100 million. And he's deserving of the money. But the NFL, football, is probably the most team-oriented sport. Every single piece, every single player has to be on the same page. They have to be working in unison. And I'm concerned that, yeah, he'd missed the previous 3 games with a high ankle sprain, was supposed to play, and now this is just another reason to be concerned about the New Orleans Saints. I mean, 3 just gut-wrenching losses in the postseason, the last 3 seasons. They're going to have to clean their act up because they're 2-3. They're in a tough division. It's not getting any easier. The NFC isn't getting any easier. They got to figure this out quickly. And Michael Thomas, you got to get back out and not just punch your teammates because they need you. Drew Brees needs you. You see the type of numbers he puts up when he has you and when he doesn't have you. And it's staggering. Speaking of staggering, Falcons get clipped again, dropped to 0-5 on the season. Not going to talk about this for too long. Dan Quinn, the head coach, got fired. That's not a surprise. And also the GM, Thomas Dimitrov, were let go. It's a shame that it came to this, but it's justified. Those 2 guys had to go. You can't start 0-5, especially given that you blew 3 fourth-quarter leads in games this year. They should have beaten the Bears. They lost to that. Should have been the Cowboys. All you have to do is teach your players how to recover an onside kick. Or not even how to recover an onside kick, just to attempt to recover an onside kick. You teach them that, you're at least 2-3 as opposed to 0-5 right now. They have not been the same since that Super Bowl loss. Dan Quinn and the Falcons were 24-29 since that loss. We always talk about a Super Bowl hangover for the champion. What about a Super Bowl hangover for the team that loses? I'm about to touch on that for the 49ers, but I mean, they lost 34-28 in in overtime in the Super Bowl, lost to the Patriots. 24-29 in 3 seasons since that Super Bowl appearance. Matt Ryan has been fine. They have a good team. I know Julio Jones didn't play over the weekend, but they still had Calvin Ridley go off for over 100 yards. Todd Gurley's having a renaissance year. He's starting to appear healthy and consistently healthy, which is a great sign for them. But Arthur Blank, the owner of the Falcons, is like, listen, you can't be 0-5. Even the Jets have a win. Oh and 5 Falcons, really? And they lose to the Carolina Panthers. I know they have Teddy Bridgewater, but they don't even have Christian McCaffrey. That's their offense, and they don't have that number 1 guy. Disappointing. Okay. Quick hitters in the NFL. Couple games. I'm going to talk about these really quickly. Not to mention now also the defensive coordinator for the Falcons, Raheem Morris, is going to be the interim head coach. Best of luck to him. Used to be a former head coach with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But quick hitters. Okay, so Dolphins beat the 49ers. I need to make sure I'm looking at this score right. 43-17. 43-17. And Kyle Shanahan said that he benched Jimmy Garoppolo to protect him. Yeah, I believe that. To protect his confidence. To protect his worst performance as a quarterback ever. He had a 1.4 QBR, Jimmy Garoppolo, yesterday. I understand he's coming back from a high ankle sprain. That's no easy feat. A 1.4 QBR? How? What do you even get for a 1.4? Do you have to complete like 3 passes? I mean, obviously it was the lowest of his career, the lowest of the NFL season. I mean, they were down 30-7 at one point. Again, I just talked about it with the Falcons. Super Bowl hangover having the opposite effect on a team. We're seeing that with the 49ers. I understand they lost Nick Bosa and Solomon Thomas. I do get that. And again, Jimmy Garoppolo was injured. But this team still has weapons. Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel. I understand Raheem Mostert was in and out, but they still have this kid, McKinnon, who can play. You got George Kittle, who's back and healthy. And they've just looked awful. I mean, Nick Mullins sure wasn't great. CJ Beathard. I mean, you know what he's going to get, but it's not just the fact that they've been losing games. It's the manner in which they've been losing, which is just atrocious right now. I mean, I can't believe this. And again, I know they're ravaged by injuries, but the problem for them is they've got a brutal schedule coming up. Listen to these next series of games for them. They've got the Rams next week versus the Rams, at the Patriots, at the Seahawks, versus the Packers, at the Saints, at the Rams, versus the Bills. These teams have a 21-5 combined record. 3 of these teams are undefeated. The Bills, the Packers, and the Seahawks. Rams only have 1 loss. Patriots and Saints are 2-2. Another quick hitter. Rams beat Washington 30-10 yesterday. Jared Goff's playing well. He's playing really well. Threw for over 300 yards again. This team is 4-1. And the last time they got off to a good start like this was in 2018. They went 5-0 and they made it to the Super Bowl. They were 3-2 last year. Again, the league thinks that they've figured out Sean McVay and the Rams, but they haven't. They were just banged up last year. And now the offensive line with Andrew Whitworth, they're protecting him. They're giving him time to throw. They've got a great running attack with Cam Akers, Malcolm Brown, and Darrell Henderson. I've talked about this before. Probably have the deepest wide receiver core: Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp. Tight ends Gerald Everett and Tyler Higbee. Josh Reynolds. This is a really, really good Rams team. Their defense is playing better. Aaron Donald has been a monster, racking up over 4 sacks this season. They got a good secondary led by Jalen Ramsey. I've talked about this before, and this is a really good Rams team, kind of flying under the radar. I had them in my top 10 last week. I think I had them at about 7 or 8. I'm going to have to look again in a couple weeks to see what their record is, but this team is starting to form into shape, coming into form as a top 5 team in the league. Speaking of top 5 teams in the league, Steelers still undefeated, 4-0. That game against the Tennessee Titans was postponed, so they ended up facing off against the Eagles yesterday. They won 38-29. Big Ben is playing great. Has eclipsed over 1,000 yards passing. Mike Tomlin has his team disciplined. Again, that trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick has worked wonders for them. And what's the reason I think that the Steelers have so much success right now is because they're flying under the radar. They had a down year last year. No one was really looking at them. No one was really paying attention to them. And now they've come back and have been on a tear because they're just flying casually under the radar. They haven't been extremely dominant necessarily, but again, the last time the Steelers got off to this kind of start where they were 4-0, they ended up making it to the Super Bowl in 2010. Now, they lost to Aaron Rodgers and the Packers in the first championship for Aaron Rodgers, but the bottom line is they went to the Super Bowl. And right now, this team has the complexion, I don't necessarily know, of making it all the way to the Super Bowl, but they could potentially, with the right matchups, make it to the AFC Championship game, potentially. Might be a little bit too soon for that, but I'm impressed with the Steelers right now. They deserve a lot of credit, and Carson Wentz, once again, another 2 interceptions in this game. And I get it. He's got no one to throw to, but I still don't want to hear that excuse anymore. I'm not expecting you to throw for over 300 yards every time, but you can't throw multiple picks in 3 out of 5 games as a quarterback. You just can't. Why does Zach Ertz only have 6 targets, 1 reception for 6 yards? This was your go-to guy for years. It always fascinated me how he would always target Carson Wentz would always target Zach Ertz when he was the quarterback, and when Nick Foles was the quarterback, he always targeted Alshon Jeffrey. Only 1 reception? All right, final topic of the day, Malkin's moments. This is a great one. I've got actually 2 Malkin's moments for you today. First, Rafael Nadal, the king of the clay courts in men's tennis, won his 20th Grand Slam title, tying Roger Federer for the most all-time in men's tennis history. He's won the clay court 13 times. He's 34 years old. He joined the I think he entered the ATP at 17 or 18. There's only been about 3 years in his professional tennis career in which he hasn't won the clay court. Won his 13th time, 20th Grand Slam in straight sets over the number 1, Novak Djokovic, who was on that kind of revenge tour for his disappointing exit in the U.S. Open. He's won 13 French Opens, not to mention 4 consecutive at Roland Garros. 4 consecutive years he's won the French Open. He's got 1 Australian Open, 2 Wimbledon, 4 U.S. Open championships. So just another tremendous run for him, and his dominance on clay continues. I still think Roger Federer is the greatest of all time, but I'd be hard-pressed not to argue. I mean, you can't argue against the clay courts. The clay courts, Rafael Nadal is the best ever on clay, without question. Second Malkin's moments, Alex Smith, the quarterback of the Washington football team, entered the game and took to the field for the first time in over 694 days since that gruesome leg injury in which he had to undergo 17 surgeries, nearly lost his leg, nearly lost his life made a full recovery, and over 2 years later, 694 days, comes back against the Rams after Kyle Allen was benched. And I don't even care what his numbers were. I don't care at all. The fact that he was out there and playing, got a standing ovation from his family in attendance, is special. These are heartwarming types of stories, and it was just one of my favorite moments to see how hard this guy is trained to get back to this spot and keep his career going. A former number 1 overall pick. He's been one of the steadiest quarterbacks in history, and just a tremendous story to see him come back. So that'll do it today for Malkin's Moments. Again, Lakers back on top, 17th championship. Thank you so much for joining me every Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific, right here on the Are You Serious Sports Network on Facebook Live, on Twitch TV, and on Twitter. I am Jonah Malkin saying to you, as always, have a lovely